Morning, everyone. My name is Jaap Sonnemans, and I'm a board director of Dutchlink. And since we've gone in a complete lockdown all around the world, and we normally gather with the Dutch community every 4 to 6 weeks in Sydney, we decided to launch our own YouTube channel. And we're hosting these regular interviews with Dutch connections all around the world and in Australia, of course. And today it's like being amongst friends and family. I'm with the Qantas family, the QF family, one of the most iconic brands in the world. And to be honest, my preferred airline flying up and down Europe and Australia. Yeah, who could have thought the world was going in a complete meltdown in the last few months after I've flown to the Netherlands. It was the third week of February, and after that, a few weeks later, we're in a new situation, the new norm. So today we're talking to three Qantas staff members with very different roles. So we got Elmer Mesman, based in the Netherlands, the commercial manager for Qantas in the Benelux. And we got Mark Penklis. He's a captain on the A380, one of my favorite planes in the world. And then we got some Dutch royalty in this conversation, Mrs. Annerie van Maarschalkerweerd, who's a flight attendant with Qantas for many years. So welcome, guys, and we'd like to have a conversation with you about this whole new situation around COVID-19. And we all know Qantas had to stand down a lot of staff. So can you share what kind of support and communication you've been getting from Qantas, and how do you stay connected as a team?
Do you want me to start with that?
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Well, Qantas has been very good in regards to our communication between, obviously in my case, cabin crew. There are weekly conference calls. We have a cabin crew support team. There is obviously also the communication by mail. Our CEO, Alan Joyce, has a weekly call from say what we call town hall, where you can also put in your questions. So in that regards, we are extremely well, be put up to date as much as possible. Don't you agree, Mark? From the pilot's side, is pretty similar.
Yes. Well, of course, as with you, Annerie, it's a little difficult for us to work from home. So yeah. There's none of that going on, of course. But yeah, there's been fantastic communication from Qantas. We've had the town halls from Alan Joyce. We have our flight operations. We call them webinars, where we come online with Zoom and we get updates on the planning for pretty much the restart for the airline. We've been doing some repatriation flights and government-sponsored flights, but we're starting to look to resume some of our domestic operations now. And of course, in terms of how it affects our workplace, we've had to change quite a few things in terms of social distancing at the airports, at check-in, social distancing with boarding the aircraft, and of course in the workplace for us now, we have issued masks, hand sanitizers, wipes. We wipe all the cockpits down. Obviously, there's deep cleaning of the aircraft, and passengers with our Fly Safe initiative are also issued with masks and wipes to wipe the area down, including, as I said, the deep cleaning of the aircraft. So a lot of safety initiatives in terms of the response to COVID, and we're all certainly looking forward to all of us getting back in the air fairly soon.
Yeah. Now that will be good, because it's can't wait to hop on a plane back to Australia. To be honest, I don't know when, but I'm staying in touch with the commercial manager in the Benelux about that. So we all know you've been working for a long time for Qantas. Each one of you have some of you over 20 years. So Elmer, what are the biggest differences between the Qantas company of 20 years ago and now? And what are what is the outlook for the future of the airline industry?
Those are two totally different questions, but I'll start with the first one. I'm with the company now almost 24 years. When I joined Qantas, we were a very Australia-centric based airline. I must say, and that's all due to internet, of course, as well. The world has become smaller and Qantas has become a real global player. I think that's the biggest difference for me, at least. I remember stepping into the office in 1996, where I had to use the fax machine in the morning to see what my workload was. I had to share a computer to download my emails, which took probably an hour to download. We were still using carbon paper to make photocopies. I mean, the whole world has changed completely, but the biggest difference for me is that Qantas has become a global airline. Was already a global airline, but with the world getting smaller, it's one of the airlines, I think, that adapts the most at the moment. I mean, the London Perth or Perth London, whatever way you want to look at it, is one of the examples. What probably is the future of aviation. Sorry to say, Mark, smaller aircraft, non-stop flights.
Yeah, what do you, Mark? How do you look at it? Like from a airline crew perspective.
Oh, there's been enormous differences over the last 20, and in fact, unfortunately, in my case, over 30 years. But there's been massive differences. Obviously, the company's a lot more efficient now. It's leaner. In terms of the aircraft, the technology of the aircraft has advanced dramatically. When I first started flying, it was on the original 747. We had flight engineers and pull-down screens in the cabin where you would show one movie followed by another one. And then, of course, the technology of the aircraft changed dramatically. They've become a lot more fuel efficient, and the four-engine aircraft, of course, were predominantly the type of aircraft that people used to fly long-haul in. But of course, these days, the large twin-engine aircraft, the fuel efficiency, which I mentioned before, is very important. And so I think point-to-point type flying rather than hub-type flying is the way ahead. And if we look at Qantas's Sunrise project, which has challenged both the major aircraft manufacturers to produce an aircraft for us to fly from Sydney to London and Sydney to New York non-stop. And so that challenge has been met, and the aircraft selected was the Airbus A350. And so very, very ultra long range flying, but very efficient in terms of the cost of operation for the airline.
Yeah. And Annerie, because you've been with Qantas for many years, more
or less started around a little bit after Mark. So exactly what he was saying, the old 747, that's sort of like has been my home away from home. And the big difference on the 747 now to the ones that we used to have was it had a galley underneath, which you call the lower lobe. And then you had the little elevator. So the carts had to be put into the elevator to go up to the, to the next level where all the economy class passengers were sitting. So that was, for instance, one of the big changes. And the same upstairs, you had a small little upper deck. And so, lots of changes. Yeah. And sadly, we said goodbye to our 747. So the last two, I think, are leaving in the next couple of weeks, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe so.
So, Mark, before you became a captain on the A380, you've been flying different aircrafts, Boeing, Airbus. Is there a preference? Is there a favorite plane, and what are the differences between all these planes?
Well, I do have a favourite plane. It was the Boeing 767, which was a twin-engine aircraft that we used both domestically and internationally, and really it was a sports car. It had lots of power and very nimble handling. It was an absolute delight to fly. And so that's probably my favourite aeroplane, only because of the fantastic performance. Like when I'm talking about performance, I'm talking about takeoff performance. It would take off, climb very fast, and was just a very nice aircraft to handle, a real sports car. And then, of course, the 747, the Queen of the Skies, was a beautiful aeroplane to fly. Very solid, great manners, very nice handling, very comfortable. And of course, we've moved on with the Airbus aircraft now, and I've flown both the A330 and the A380. And the big difference with them is, of course, the Airbus is a fly-by-wire aircraft. Fly-by-wire. And the fly-by-wire is a computerized flight control system. So on the Boeing aircraft, you have a control column, a traditional control column. And on the Airbus, you have a very small side stick, like a fighter aircraft side stick, which you use to control the aircraft. So the way that you fly them is actually, or manipulate them, is completely different. But I have flown Airbus for quite a long time now. I really enjoy flying them. The A380 is an absolutely beautiful aeroplane to fly. It's very quiet. It rides the turbulence very well, and it's just an absolutely lovely aeroplane to fly, and probably equally my favourite with the 767.
Okay, good to hear. So, Elmer, back to my other question. What's the lookout for the airline industry from like past COVID-19?
Well, as our CEO Alan Joyce said, the Qantas of 2019 or the Qantas of 2021 will definitely not be the Qantas of 2019, and I think that's not only Qantas, that's the whole global aviation industry. This is having such a massive impact that I think it will take at least 2 to 3 years to come back to the state where we were before, and even then, it's not only where you're allowed to fly or if you fly, but it's the way how we fly. How do we accommodate passengers? How many passengers can we accommodate? What's the demand? So if I had a crystal ball and I could tell you what the future outlook would be, I would probably not sitting with this company. I would be sitting somewhere else with a lot of money. But it's not all doom and gloom. I think there is still quite a lot to do within aviation. There is no way that aviation will be out. I mean, we've seen it with the ash cloud, which was a very good example here in Europe when everything came to stand still. This was much shorter than it was now, but it clearly indicated, especially here at Schiphol Airport, how important aviation is, not only from a transport perspective, people moving to countries, but also from an economical perspective. So yes, it will be different, but time will tell. I mean, we can't predict this whole situation. So yeah, it's difficult, but we'll be there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So got a question out of the community, more for Mark and Annerie. You must meet many interesting people in your travel. Is there anyone that stands out, Mark? Have you met someone who really struck your, like, was out of this world?
Well, somebody that certainly pops into mind straight away was I was lucky enough to be asked by Qantas to look after Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. And so that was an absolute thrill and a great experience. And so I was asked to take him into the A380, Airbus A380 simulator, which he'd expressed an interest in flying. And so we were getting the simulator ready. And of course, when you do this type of thing, and particularly with somebody like that, the brief is not to tell anybody, because particularly people like Neil Armstrong, it turns into a complete circus if word gets out that he's coming into the training centre. So I had to keep it very quiet. And I was getting this flight simulator ready, but there was a problem with the flight simulator. And I said to the technicians, oh, look, we need to fix this because we've got this VIP coming in and everything's got to be working. And the technician said, we've been getting phone calls all week to make sure the simulator's okay. Like, who is this person? I said, well, I'm sorry, I can't actually tell you. And they went, you can't tell us. And I said, and they said, well, can he even fly? And I went, oh, yeah, he can definitely fly.
He can fly to the moon and back.
Fly to the moon, exactly. So anyway, he arrived and with two very big bodyguards, and he walked up to me and said, oh, you must be Mark. And I thought to myself, that's unbelievable. Neil Armstrong knows my name. And so anyway, we hopped into the simulator and we were flying around, and I was explaining to him the controls of the A380. And he said to me, he started asking me some quite complicated questions about these flight control computers I was telling you about earlier, like very technical questions. And I said, well, you seem to know a lot about it. And he said, yes, well, I was on the engineering team for the design of the Apollo space capsule. And I went, oh, well, of course. and then he was telling me about flying the X-15 rocket plane at 6,000 miles an hour, and how it used to land twice as fast as a commercial airliner and used to weave around all over the place, and they were cutting bits off it and going flying the next day. And he was telling me all these stories. It was absolutely fascinating. And at the end of it, I said, how old are you? And he said, oh, I'm 82. And I went, well, what's your secret? And he said, red wine.
There you go.
And I went, red wine? I said, that's fantastic. Of all the things he could have said to me, like dedication, professionalism, study, he actually said red wine. Anyway, we said our goodbyes and I went home, and when I got home, my wife said to me, how did it go? I said, just hold on a minute. And I went to the cupboard,
a bottle of red wine.
pulled out a bottle of red wine and poured. I started drinking it, and my wife said, what are you doing? And I said, well, Neil Armstrong said it was okay. But really, it was a highlight to meet him, and he was a wonderful person and very generous.
Yeah, it must have been Australian red wine, Mark.
It was definitely Australian red wine. Yeah.
Hey, Annerie, have you come across some interesting people? I bet you have, because you've been going through that cabin forever and ever.
Yeah. How long was this interview? Yes, I have. I have had the privilege of looking after many different people, from royalty to the movie star, to the rugby teams, the soccer teams, the cricket. I'm a sports mad person, so those were really highlights. And then being invited, actually Mark was with me once too, that we got an invitation to come to Johannesburg and watch the Wallabies play in Ellis Park. And then we got invited afterwards, just to mingle with everybody. And that was, it's fantastic. But not only the famous people, but just the stories you hear. And that's what I miss most. Everybody has got a story. And it's wonderful. And because you have an accent, people tend to ask you a question straight away. You have that connection.
That's why you're Dutch royalty. Huh?
Pardon?
That's why you're Dutch royalty.
Oh, you're very kind.
Hey, so with the many places you be visiting all around the world, is there a favorite destination, Mark?
Well, certainly we've been very lucky to travel our whole lives to many destinations. I think, and I'll be interested to see what Annerie says, but probably my favourite place was Tahiti. And when we talk about the changes in aviation these days, there's a flight every day. So when you're doing long haul operations, you might stop somewhere for 24 hours and then the next day you get on the next flight and go on to the next destination. But in those days, there was only 2 flights a week through Tahiti. So we used to get 5 days there, which was fantastic. And we used to stay down on the lagoon in Papeete and a great crew hotel because everybody sort of stayed around the hotel, and it was such a great culture, so beautiful. But in terms of flying, I think my favourite place was flying into the old Kai Tak airport. The Kai Tak, the old airport at Hong Kong, where you used to come down. We used to fly an approach called the checkerboard approach. And you'd fly down through the buildings, and at the very last minute, you'd turn through the buildings towards the runway right at the very last second, and then roll out and touch down. And it was certainly an absolute favourite as far as the pilots were concerned.
So what's your favourite destination, Annerie?
I agree with Mark. When we used to fly to Papeete, fantastic. But I must say, one that I was quite taken with was Zimbabwe. Because that was in the time, same as what Mark's saying with Papeete, where we only had one flight a week. So you were there for all that time, and you would, as a crew, so you had pilots with you, the rest of the cabin crew, and someone would have organized to go to Victoria Falls, and you stay in the old Victoria Falls hotel. You go over the Zambezi River, and then going in the flight of the Angels. And and this is coming from a flight attendant, I was really nervous about doing that. And the pilots would say, "Come on, you'll be fine." And here you were in this little plane, and you were just going over the Victoria Falls. And I mean, that's just one of the many. But that's one I never forget. It was fantastic.
And yours, Elmer? I think I know it already, but
stupid question. Probably Australia, and one in particular, and it's not Qantas related, but Whitehaven Beach, the approach with the water aircraft. That's stunning.
Yeah.
That's it's interesting to hear your stories, and while we're talking, I'm thinking like, Jesus, I should have followed your career in the aviation industry, but you
would have been good. You would have been good.
No, I'm too tall for a plane. We've got one more question before we end this conversation. How are you responding to COVID-19 in your personal lives? As we've heard, a lot of Australians been locked down inside, and maybe we start with you, Elmer, because we had obviously a different lockdown in the Netherlands compared to Australia.
Yeah, we call it an intelligent lockdown here in the Netherlands. I don't know if it's very intelligent, but it's slowing down a bit in terms of, or it's basically opening up now. But when we started in March, it was quite challenging. Everybody was sort of locked up, and with a family of 5, that's quite challenging. With my wife working in the hotel industry, and me in the aviation, that's the two industries that are probably one of the hardest hit industries. So we are trying to do our best here at home to cope with the workflow, and in the meantime do some homeschooling with 3 kids who were not very used to be sitting at home next to their parents. At least not that long. So that's quite challenging, and not going to your family for almost 3-4 months now. It is opening up a bit, but social distancing is a big thing. The 1.5 meters is. Restaurants have opened up. And to be quite honest, we haven't gone to any cafes or restaurants as yet. We prefer to be cooking at home and either ordering or getting somewhere from the snack bar. That will open up, but I think we were all sort of very much woken up by the fact that this disease is quite serious. So even the kids are very serious in keeping distance, and what the future will tell how this goes. But it's having a big impact, both business and personal. Yeah, absolutely.
I can imagine. And you, Mark, how does it affect your personal life?
Well, actually, I found it quite relaxing. The actual lockdown itself, we were doing a lot of cooking. together, my wife and I, and I've been reading an enormous amount of books. And of course, there's always some fantastic TV series to watch. So all in all, I didn't mind it at all. But of course, you do miss certain things, and it's good to be slowly coming out of lockdown now. And certainly heading up for a cup of coffee with your friends is something that it's really nice to be able to do again.
Yeah. And you, Annerie? Sorry, Elmer?
I'll send you 3 kids, Mark, and then you know how easy it is.
Not quite so relaxing.
Yeah, no, very, very similar to both of you. Although I see it a bit as a dress rehearsal, for life after flying, because initially my husband's working from home as well. So, you have to suddenly get used to that, because, for 34 plus years, you've been used to looking at that little piece of paper that basically dictates your life for the next 2 months. And suddenly you're like, okay, what do we do now? So I was lucky that, the weather here has been very good. So we've done lots of walking. And obviously now that we restrictions have eased a bit, we're catching up with, and a lot of the flying friends, like, you're organizing walks and making sure that, everyone that is okay, and because not everybody is in the same position. So, just keep communicating with each other, and it's been really good, really good.
Yeah. Thank you very much, lady and gentlemen, for this very, very joyful conversation in these very weird times. And I hope we'll soon get out of this, and we go back to the new normal. I'm sure that there will be a new normal. Personally, I can't wait to come back to Australia, and hopefully in August I'll be able to board my preferred airline and return what I call Australia home for it.
Yeah, lovely. We look forward to see you again here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, great to see you guys from in different parts of the world, Netherlands and Australia, and talk to you soon separately. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaap.
But no matter how far